Good evening, everybody. Thank you for showing up tonight, and thank you for being here for the meeting. This is the regular meeting of the District 25 School Board. It is July 15th, 2021. I'm noting it is 7:40, and Madam Secretary, please note the roll, and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, it's good to see everyone. It's been a nice summer so far, and it's good to be back here. We're going to move to recognitions and presentations, which we have none for this meeting in July. Community input's not yet. I appreciate your enthusiasm, though. We'll be there shortly. We do have to appoint a secretary pro tem, since board member Anisha Patel is not here. Do I have a motion to appoint a secretary pro tem?
Mr. President.
Yes, Chad.
I nominate Gina for secretary pro tem.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Brian. Chad and Brian. All right.
That was well planned.
Do we have any other nominations? All right. With that, let's take it to a vote. I guess with no other nominations, it's just it's unanimous. So let's congratulations, Gina. Be passing the green binder here shortly.
Mr. President, can I also ask the board, as we get started, if the board would be interested in moving item 13, which is the superintendent's report, which is towards the end of the meeting, moving it up earlier in the meeting, because I believe that's a topic of high interest for people. So maybe moving it to after communications to board members, so after number 7.
All right. Item 13 to be moved after number 7. Does anybody have any objections with that? That's probably something that I think a lot of people here want to hear about, and a lot of people at home watching would like to listen to before they go to bed. All right. Okay. All right. I don't think we need to take a vote. I think we just do it. And all right. So after 7, we'll do item 13, and everything will be good, and then move on. Now, community input. This is where the public may address the board. Before we move forward, I'm very sorry. I got to read this very long sheet here. The opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a comment to make about business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. As the board strives to make the best decisions for the district, public input can be helpful. In order for the board to reserve sufficient time to conduct its business and operate its meetings in the spirit of civility and decorum, speakers are expected to follow the following guidelines. 1, address the board only at the time provided on the agenda and only after being recognized by the board president. 2, identify yourself and be brief. Your comments must be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board may shorten this allotted time in order to conserve time to allow a maximum number of people the opportunity to speak. 3, please be respectful and courteous, and the board members request that you not make any statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. The board typically does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during public comment period, but we do listen intently and appreciate your input from our community. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go with the order of the submissions that we have. Number 1, Jack Mangoran. Hello, Jack.
Hi, thanks for giving me the chance to speak tonight. My name is Jack Montgomery, and I'll be a 7th grader at Thomas in the fall. I'm really hoping that you can give our parents a choice to have us wear a mask or not for the school year. I also think that teachers shouldn't have to wear a mask if they don't want to. They're all fully vaccinated, so it's much easier to learn when you can read their lips and see their full faces. Most of my friends at CMS are vaccinated anyways, and we had such an amazing summer feeling normal and not wearing masks. It's going to be hard and depressing to go back to them. I don't like wearing masks because they make me feel claustrophobic, and that makes me feel anxious. It's super uncomfortable when it's hot in the building, and in PE class, I can't perform to my best ability when I'm masked, and that makes me stressed out as a kid who loves sports. Also, I'm worried that we'll have to wear masks while playing on the TMS basketball team if I make it next year, and that's really stressful. I was in basketball camp this summer, and we had to wear masks. One day I was hustling really hard, and I couldn't get enough oxygen through my mask, and I started passing out and had to go home. It was really embarrassing, and I know that was only because of my mask. Lastly, I already lost my first year in middle school to COVID and wearing masks, and I only have 2 years left. I really want to be able to experience middle school normally. This is why I think parents should decide if their kids should be masked or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And good luck in basketball, and try not to slam dunk too hard so we don't have to approve new backboards. Next up, we have Laura Cully.
Hi, I'm Laura Cully. IDPH and ISB updates to COVID guidance was just announced, and there were some changes that were driven partly by CDC changes, partly from operational realities by the districts in the state of Illinois to ensure that our children reach their full potential in a great district. So let's look at those factors that are hurting our kids' full potential at school. Let's start with exclusions. ISB has changed the rule. The July rule is now remote instructions will be made available to students who have not received a COVID-19 vaccine or who are not eligible for a COVID-19 vaccine only while they're under quarantine. So no more homebound instructions, as we were told might be the case in June. That's good. At least the kids should get some instruction, at least remotely. But we should consider going further. If cases are low and vaccination high, like our area right now, consider less restrictive rules. Consider if surveillance testing can be used to keep exposed kids in instead of remote instruction keeping them out. Make as your North Star this year to keep the kids in. Let's go to lunch. At lunch, my kids said that the dividers were smelly, had food stuck to them, and they would just go around them to talk to their friends anyway, and no one got sick. Why are we spoiling their appetite and potentially exposing them to unsanitary dividers? Let's remove the partitions. Let the kids eat. How about the playground? Why are our kids in squares or parts of the playground when Arlington Heights Sounds of Summer will have packs of crowds? CDC says vaccinated or unvaccinated outside is safe, especially with low COVID numbers like we have now. Let the kids play. What about the masks? Elmhurst, which is my hometown, a place with a large district in DuPage and a very similar in very many ways to Arlington Heights, just announced Tuesday that they would go mask optional and to, quote, significantly reduce the number of quarantines so we can keep healthy kids in school. The superintendent is encouraging the unvaccinated to wear masks, but not mandating it. Many other schools across the state of Illinois are also going mask optional, like Barrington and Wheaton. The superintendent of Elmhurst says she wants to promote, quote, a climate of respect on vaccination status and views on masking. I hope we can all agree about respect, even if we don't agree on specifics. Let's have a fresh start this year. Get a plan together that is clear, that teachers and parents understand, and that puts our kids first. Let the kids breathe. This summer, we sent my middle schooler to overnight camp in Wisconsin for a month. We pick her up this Sunday. The camp had a plan months before summer started. They stuck to it. And yes, there were layered mitigations, testing, bubbles, pods, masks in specific situations. But they also had a goal to remove masks when feasible. After a week of no cases, mask wearing was reduced and up to 100 kids could come together without masks. Not in all situations, but in most. 200 staff, 450 kids, 0 cases. This is in line with CDC guidance to remove mitigations where it makes sense, vaccination levels good, cases low, but you have to have the will to try. The best decision I have ever made was to send my daughter to camp to lift her spirits, fill her soul with fun, get some exercise, and to just be a kid. My daughter wrote me a letter from camp saying in part, I love it here. I am so happy to have come to camp. Please make that her view of school too this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Marianne Zolewski. Marianne? Oh, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marianne Zolewski. I am a resident, taxpayer, parent, former teacher, and voter. Before I get started, please let the record show I am not an anti-vaxxer. I just handed Ms. O'Brien a copy of my COVID vaccine card and both of my children's state of Illinois immunization records. I am not an anti-masker either. You've seen me here before, masked. And both my 5 and 3-year-old children continue to comply and stay masked when they are indoors in public facilities. The reason I am here is because I believe in the freedom of choice. The Honorable John Lewis said, "Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." Tonight, I'm here for necessary trouble. Although there are many topics that could be addressed tonight, I want to focus the discussion surrounding mask wearing and the segregation of vaccinated and unvaccinated children in our District 25 schools. As I watched the parents speak at the last board meetings, advocating for their children, trying to educate you and the community about the unnecessary quarantining of 3,800 students, healthy students, and how statistics show that these fabric masks are not effective in complete prevention of a virus. It became apparent to me on what could have been done differently while addressing this board. The mistake made was that these parents asked you to have mercy on their kids while you discussed the guidances and the supposed laws surrounding quarantining and mask wearing. The truth is this: those weren't laws. And we don't have to ask you for mercy. And there should be no debate. While some of you hide behind the various unions in Illinois, and while ISBE has you in their back pocket, we the parents have something in our back pockets as well, and it's called the law. For those of you who are not familiar with Illinois law, let me educate you, and for those who know the law and are choosing to ignore it, let me refresh your memory. You see, the legislators of Illinois make the laws and create administrative bodies that are given certain authorities to pass rules and regulations given by those legislators. In this case, it's IDPH and ISBE, and who then report to the governor, which brings me to my next point, which is a governor's executive order is merely a rule of guidance, not a law. While you follow the CDC and the IDPH recommendations, that's all they are, recommendations, not mandates. They do not replace local and state laws. Therefore, how these guidances are interpreted and implemented is up to you, the local school board. We elected you to do that. Since House Bill 2789 has currently not been passed into law, the IDPH has no powers within our schools. Let me repeat that. The IDPH has no powers within our schools. All an executive order does is instill fear in uninformed people who don't know the laws. It's just guidance and a revisal of public health guidelines. It means nothing legally. It's not a rule, regulation, or an adopted standard within the Illinois Administrative Code, Title 23.120. Are there duly adoptive rules, regulations, or standards in the Administrative Code that says masks are required? I checked, and the answer is no. Title 2.3 says nothing about virus or mask wearing that lawfully says you have to follow guidance. In addition, Illinois law tells ISBE to create standards for school. If you go to il.gov and look up 105 ILCS 5/2.3.25, you will see nothing about mask wearing exists. Now, let me address the concept that per the governor's orders, if not followed, the schools won't get funding, can be shut down, or won't be covered by insurance companies. That is false. You see, the schools are protected by the tort immunity. So as long as you follow Title 2.3, you have nothing to worry about. Title 2.3 of the Administrative Code is what you want to follow, right, Dr. Vine? Yes. If so, then show us where it says masks are required. What are you guys going to do if children come to school without a mask? Are you going to slap them with a pink slip, send them home, or expel them? Are you going to place that kind of undue stress and decision-making onto your teachers, as if they haven't been through enough this past year? If so, you and your staff are going to have a very busy year, along with your attorneys, if lawsuits are made against this district. Masks should be optional, period. And does anyone really understand the science behind the CDC's recommendation for the segregation of vaccinated and unvaccinated children in a classroom? We've discriminated and segregated children before, and that didn't hold up in court, did it? Not under this Constitution. Unfortunately, I'm not going to take much more time to get into the Nuremberg Code, but I encourage any parents here to familiarize yourselves with what it is. And as I come to close, I'd like to say to any parents that are listening or here, please educate your children at home every chance you get. Teach them to stand up for themselves and their rights. Teach them to be compassionate and respect people who look, talk, and think differently than themselves. Teach them right from wrong, and teach them good versus evil. Because while there's a lot of good in this world, there is evil too. And sometimes we need to stand up in the face of it and call it for what it is, evil.
Thank you. Next we have Erin Zurich. Erin.
Hi, good evening. Erin Zurich. I basically kind of want to piggyback of what Marianne was saying, but I believe that masks should be at parents' discretion. All COVID-19 masks are actually authorized, not approved or licensed by the federal government. They are emergency use authorization only, EUA. EUA products are by definition experimental and thus require the right to refuse. Under the Nuremberg Code, which she was talking about, the foundation of ethical medicine, no one may be coerced to participate in a medical experiment. Consent of the individual is absolutely essential. Any EUA mandate requiring individuals to wear face masks conflicts with Section 360 BBB 3E 1A 2, Section 1 to 3, which provides that the person must be informed of the option to refuse to wear the device. As young children, proper hand washing and other mitigations in place are a better preventative measure of spread of disease. Children need to be able to see facial expressions to learn social cues. They need to be able to see how mouths work to learn how to speak properly, which clearly I can't do. They need to be able to breathe fresh air. There's just so many things that I think we're not realizing that is really going to affect children. Anytime my son, who's 6 years old, who's always been very compliant because we teach him at home to follow the rules, anytime he realizes he doesn't have to wear a mask, he is jumping in excitement, and he's never been one to really complain about it. So I think we're really going to see the detriment to our children later on, and I hope and pray that this district is proactive and has our children in their best mind. So in actuality too, in the beginning of April 2020, the proportion of children's mental health related to emergency room visits increased all the way through October in relation to 2019. Kids aged 5 to 11, it increased 24%, and from 12 to 17 years old, it increased 31%. I can't even imagine what those numbers would be now as this continues on. But children have never been the at-risk population. They've never been the cause of concern or spread of COVID. If you look up any data, it's more than half, if not half, is in nursing homes. I mean, it's just absurd. All faculty has now had the option to be vaccinated. We've given them that choice. I feel like they've suffered long enough. And so there's just no reason masks should be required. Please update the plans for this fall. I'm asking masks be optional. It's up to the parents' discretion. Give us the choice depending on our child and our comfort levels. And that's it. Thanks for your time.
Next up, we have Marianne and Elise Corcoran.
Corcoran.
I think wearing masks are wrong. Reason 1. When it is hot in the classroom, we sweat and it sticks to our faces. It does not feel good wearing a mask, a wet mask, for 6.5 hours. Reason 2, it's not comfortable wearing a mask. Reason 3, recess zones, it's like prison. You can't play with kids that not in your class. Recess is mostly making friends. How can you take making friends? That's one of the biggest needs in a child. Reason 4, hot lunch is cold lunch. The pizza is cold and chicken nuggets too. Why does COVID make my food cold? Reason 5, in Zoom I can only see my teacher's face, but in person I can't see her face.
Thank you, Elise.
Marianne Corcoran. Anxiety is the fear of the unknown. Will I get the job? Will I pass the test? Will people like me? COVID has caused an immense amount of anxiety for the entire world over the last 1.5 years. Our kids are no exception. They watch our every move, they learn how we react to anxiety, and they model our behavior. But they can't watch us and learn from us properly if they can't see our faces, and we can't see theirs. What we end up teaching them is that living in fear is normal and that speaking out is not okay. Our level of uncertainty as parents during COVID has waxed and waned, but at this point we know that our kids have about a 0.005% chance of dying from COVID. So a 99.995% recovery rate if they even get it at all. To me, who's not a risk taker, those are extremely safe odds to send my kid back to school and every single other activity in which they would like to participate. I know that not every parent has the same level of anxiety because it does not occur in a vacuum, and I would never pretend to understand the complexities of their mental health simply because I'm a psychologist. We learn quite a bit about our patients during treatment, but in the end, decisions are made by the patient. It's the same with you as a school board. You have your own strengths and responsibilities, but in the end, you're not here to make our medical decisions. Creating an incentive program for those who are vaccinated is not within your wheelhouse. We appreciate your work on curriculum and budget, but we do not appreciate you encroaching into our personal lives. I started a mask choice petition Tuesday night at 10 p.m. And as of 10 p.m. Wednesday night, less than 24 hours later, there were 460 signatures. And as of now, there's over 520. Please take this to mean that I am not alone here. Just because I speak to you here every month and send emails weekly does not mean I am making this stuff up and I am simply a squeaky wheel causing trouble. 500 parents in your district want their power back. They're begging to have a choice in how their kids learn, develop, and breathe. My family came to this district because of its reputation as one of the best for our children's learning potential. Please keep your focus on those wonderful parts of the district and leave the medical choices to the parents and our doctors. Choice is all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the people who have provided sheets. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak?
Yes. Hello, Melissa Kerr.
Yeah.
On the board docs public agenda, consent agenda items, please include the supporting documentation so I may follow along during the meeting. Okay.
All right, thank you. Anybody else from the audience? All right, thank you. We will move on to our consent agenda, and this is an action item, so I will need a motion.
Mr. President.
Yes, Rich.
I move that the Board of Education approve those items on the consent agenda as follows. A, personnel report. B, treasurer's report. C, invoices. D, regular and closed session meeting minutes of June 10th, 2021. E, extension of intergovernmental agreement for food service for District 26, 2021-22.
Right, and do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you, Chad. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Yeah, seeing and hearing none, I'll take it to a vote. Let's begin.
Yes.
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 All right, the vote passes 6-0. Communications to and from board members. We will start with NSSEO and Gina Faso.
So the only announcement I have is that there was a very successful groundbreaking for the new gym at Timber Ridge after significant amount of fundraising and an incredible accomplishment, and I'm looking forward to seeing what NSSEO delivers when the gym is completed.
Yeah, very nice. I was almost looking forward to a sledding hill there because there's the big hill of dirt there. I thought maybe they were doing something cool too, but yeah, that'll be exciting to see. Next, we move on to IASB. Anisha is not here. Does anybody have any IASB updates that perhaps we can supplement with her absence? All right, I know Triple I is coming up, and that's going to be in person, so that should be an exciting team building event. Last year, of course, it was non-existent, and this year I'm looking forward to attending and really getting back in the swing of things. And Triple I is a nice conference that is a great asset to the board and something that we can all benefit from. So that's coming up in November, so stay tuned, and I'm sure Anisha will fill us in as it comes up. EdRed, Rich and Stacy. I'll start with Rich.
We've gone into, EdRed has gone into their summer hiatus or summer vacation mode, but the governor, we're still waiting on the governor to pass a bunch of bills. So as I talked last time, collectively, not only just educational, but collectively over 700 bills went to the governor to sign, and he has 60 days to act on those particular pieces. There are a couple that have already started to filter in that have some impact to us. Senate Bill 654, which is the playtime bill, which we already really meet because we do recess. So that one's okay. The other one that got signed, and this does have more of a direct impact to us right away, is House Bill 376, which is the Teaching Equitable Asian American History Act, has now passed into law. Basically what it says is beginning in the 2022-23 school year, every public elementary school and high school will be required to include a unit of instruction studying the events of Asian American history, including the history of Asian Americans in Illinois and the Midwest. Now, it's interesting, though they said this is what we have to cover, the law actually says the district has to decide what is a unit, which is kind of maybe interesting, but I'm sure we'll get an update from Lori and staff as that comes to bear. The final thing maybe to note, one of our state senators in the area is Senator Ann Gillespie, and she will be hosting a town hall here in this very building, in this very room, next week Thursday from 7 to 8:30. So logistically, if you made it to here for this meeting, you've probably figured out how to make it here for that meeting as well. So now you get an added bonus. State Representative Mark Walker will also be at this meeting. So if you're feeling that just that hole, that there isn't a board meeting, you have an opportunity to at least be in the building to have that particular piece. And then finally, EdRed will get back together again for their luncheon kickoff in September 24th. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Rich. Stacy, anything?
In addition to what Rich shared, I would just share that the regular meetings, other than the kickoff luncheon, Lori and I had the opportunity to meet with the new director, Bridget, actually today, and share with her some information just regarding some of the perspectives from our district viewpoint on some of the issues at hand, legislative issues that have been dealing with for years, as well as our participation level in the organization of EdRed. Regular monthly meetings may not restart up again. I think she said November. So.
All right, thank you, Rich, and thank you, Stacy. Next, we're going to move on to our monthly board governance framework, kind of, I guess, summary of each section. And this month, I'm going to go to 2:120, and this is under board member development. It kind of takes some relevance this month because we're going to be talking about something and kind of bringing everything back home. It's the board takes responsibility for itself. The board will schedule an annual workshop to complete board self-evaluation and review government's team agreements and processes. So I think that's relevant given that we're moving into a new school year, kind of refresh our thinking and how we're going to kind of view our role in moving on to the next school year and doing what's best for our kids. So that is my board governance framework. So something to think about until our next meeting and pretty much every day why we do this job. With that, we're going to move on to communications to board members. And first we'll start with the PTA, and that's Nicole Barbieri. Is it Barbieri or Barbieri? Really? All right. Thank you.
It is said that children learn best when they feel connected to who they are learning with. The National PTA, Scholastic, Common Sense Media, and Great Schools have created a public service partnership summer program called Be a Learning Hero. For the last 6 years, this partnership has provided kindergarten through 8th graders and their families with an online summer reading math readiness program. This year's theme is Summer Recharge. The program provides reading and math activities that cater to your child's ability, and the activities can be done at their own pace. Parents and caregivers are given online directions and materials to use at home to work on readiness skills for their child's grade level. All materials are at no cost and are aligned to state learning standards. Materials are available in both English and Spanish. To learn more about how the Summer Recharge program can work for your family, visit www.bealearninghero.org. Also, if you haven't joined your school's PTA for the 2021-2022 school year, please visit your school's website or www.sd25.org to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, we have ABC 25 Foundation, and this is going to be Gina reporting on that.
So ABC 25 is also on a summer break this month, but we do have one message similar to the PTA's message, which is if you haven't joined ABC 25, please do so as part of either your registration packet, or please consider it as an opportunity for supporting our great teachers and the grants that we pass out to them. Thanks.
Thank you, Gina. And I know my daughter wore her Get Burp Challenge shirt to softball today, so it was the orange one from a couple years ago. It was bright, really nice, but yeah, it's wonderful things they're doing. Next up, the ATA, Allison Berg.
Hello. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My goal this year is to continue to shine a spotlight on the schools and all the amazing things going on here in District 25. So not only do I stand here as ATA president and 4th grade teacher at Windsor School, but I am also a Summer U teacher. So I was just going to give you guys a quick update on all the great things that went on at Summer U this summer. You can look at the slideshow behind me. There's some great pictures of our kids in action, so you can look at that rather than me. I would like to just after an unprecedented school year when nothing seemed normal, the return to Summer U felt really like we were almost there. Nick Filipowski and Amy Harder did an amazing job running a smooth and seamless program for many of our District 25 kids. We had many District 25 teachers and some out-of-district teachers providing fun and exciting activities for all of our students. There was a wide range of classes offered. Students could take enrichment classes like a trip around the world, shameless plug for my own class. They also could take reinforcement classes for math and reading, middle school skills classes, EL, kindergarten review, coding, and lit camp, just to name a few of all the opportunities that we provided for our kids. It was amazing to see the students engaged, working with peers, completing projects, doing crafts, reading, and just being excited about school. There are lots of smiling eyes, laughter, fist bumps to show all of our happy students. It was like really awesome to hear their laughter down the hallway. It just felt really normal, which was awesome. It was refreshing to feel normal after a difficult school year, and we're looking forward to just moving forward in that direction for the fall. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. With that, we're, as we referenced earlier, move to item 13. So if we flip a couple pages or slide down on your computer, we'll look at that. This is it's to be determined whether it's an action or not. So I'll defer to Dr. Bine to kind of move forward on this.
Thank you. I'm going to and just so the audience knows in the future, we've purchased audio-visual equipment. You will soon be able to see the presentation both on this wall and on that wall. So I'm sorry that you're having to turn around in your chairs tonight, but I appreciate that. As we know, we received in the afternoon of Friday, July 9th, some update from the Illinois State Board of Education and the Illinois Department of Public Health. They seem to have a trend on late Fridays to provide us with updates, but we've had an opportunity since then to both attend some detailed webinars with the Illinois Department of Public Health as well as several school law firms to interpret that information. And of course, we've gone through it many times here at the district office. So I'd like to provide the board some interpretation of that guidance, as well as we're ready to provide some additional information about the new school year. I'm going to look both at the screen and on my paper because I don't have my contacts on, so excuse me for going back and forth. Our state superintendent, Dr. Ayala, did make her declaration on the resolution that the ISB board had prepared for her. And it says that full in-person learning is the top priority for our new school year, and that a remote option must be available for students who have not received a vaccine and need to quarantine. So they did change that part of the declaration. I know we had an audience member that she was exactly correct. Anyone that has to quarantine, we must provide a remote option for. Here's some general updates related to District 25 and that new resolution. We had 25 exclusions, so 25 students that were either close contacts or positive during the last week of school. That went down dramatically from the previous few weeks. We saw a trend of really strong decline, all the way to this summer school where we've had 0 cases and 0 exclusions. And when you look at our extended school year and our summer U, we had over 850 students here this summer, again with 0 COVID cases and 0 exclusions, which was really fabulous. The Illinois Department of Public Health in the new guidance states that vaccinated people do not need to wear masks nor quarantine as they relate to school. Masks are not required when outdoors for any students or staff, whether they are vaccinated or unvaccinated. And this is a big one for us. Close contacts are now defined as within 3 feet to a positive case. You may remember it was within 6 feet. So even in that first bullet point where we had 25 exclusions, that was using a 6-foot measurement. We now have a 3-foot measurement based on the research that the Illinois Department of Public Health did in the last few months of the school year and throughout the summer with some school districts across the state where they did a pilot study using 3 feet. They've now taken that research and we all will use 3 feet moving forward. We have the option at this point. We don't plan to participate in screening testing for COVID-19, although we're continuing to review that to see if it's something that might be useful for us on a voluntary basis for our families. But we plan in District 25, I would recommend that all other operations of our schools return to pre-pandemic procedures. and some specifics that I want to share. In terms of the area of masks, the CDC and the Illinois Department of Public Health adopted the CDC's recommendations, recommends, but does not require, that masks be worn indoors by all individuals who are not fully vaccinated. The CDC current order, however, this is unique and important for us to remember, applies to all public transportation, including school buses, and it says that regardless of mask policies in schools, masks must be worn by all riders on a bus. So just like at the airport, on an airplane, that applies to public school buses. Vaccinated or unvaccinated, at this moment, all riders on our school buses must wear masks. There are still requirements for masking during some inside sports, but we're waiting for the IHSA and the IDPH to give some updates on that, which we hope are coming out next week. And a local district may remove any of the mitigation strategies that we've been using, including masking, but should do so gradually and consider our local situation. Another big topic I know that we're all interested in is about physical distancing and quarantine. Again, close contacts are now defined as within 3 feet of a positive case. Quarantine at the moment is currently 10 days for students. A reminder here that when we look at District 25's experience, we experienced decreasing and very low exclusion numbers in June using the 6 feet measurement. Again, down to 25 students during the last week of school, and again, 0 cases or exclusions this summer. This next point, again, is something that I think is people may not realize and is important to understand in terms of quarantining. There is an exception to the need to quarantine. In a K-12 indoor classroom setting, the close contact definition of 3 feet apart excludes students who are within that 3 feet of a positive case if both of those students were wearing masks and if there are some other mitigation strategies in place. So just to clarify, one way to completely avoid quarantining, according to current guidance, is if I'm positive and Scott is a close contact, if we both have masks, Scott does not have to quarantine. In the school year we just came from, even if we both had masks on, Scott had to quarantine, right? So one way to guarantee, so people are aware that no one quarantines, is if both parties are wearing masks. So just an FYI about that. We've talked about it before, and I just want to reiterate. I believe that the mitigation strategies we used in District 25 have been exceptional, or the implementation of those have been exceptional. I know school board members have shared in the past as they've gone and visited schools how impressive those strategies are, both by our teachers and our students as well. As we move forward, considering the new guidance, I want to just remind us all about the mitigation strategies that we're doing and that I believe are very important moving forward. Educating our community and our students especially, and communicating about what's happening in District 25 continues to be key moving forward. A reminder that our ventilation system has excellent ratings from a third-party industrial engineer organization. Our general cleaning and disinfecting procedures are excellent and actually exceed the guidelines. Washing hands and hygiene etiquette, so like when we sneeze or cough, that we cough into our elbow, will continue to be emphasized as we move forward. 3-foot distancing is something we will work really hard to put in place wherever possible and practical, or basically I would say at the greatest extent possible. We can have a lot of spaces in our schools that are 3-foot distance between children, not all, but very many. Our contact tracing procedures have been exceptional, and we are very skilled at that process. We are dedicated to continuing to hosting vaccine clinics when vaccines are available for students in case if their families wish to get those. Our vaccine clinics have been, again, exceptional. We were one of the first to organize that, and ours has been used as models in other districts and other areas. We are happy to be a part of the community offering those vaccine clinics here in District 25 so that those are available for those who want them. We will continue to encourage sick individuals to stay home. And we have done a great job having testing for symptomatic individuals. We don't know if the state's going to continue that opportunity at this point. We haven't heard, right, Stacey? If they do, we have skilled nursing staff that has done that very well. We saw a significant increase in families taking us up on that opportunity as the year progressed, and we were able to, again, give them results within 15 minutes, which allows many people who are symptomatic to end up coming right back to school because they have that testing. So we're committed to continuing to do that if that's available in the state of Illinois. Oh, sorry. All right, I've got to go. Not that, not that. One more. You guys are killing me. Are you forwarding when I'm forwarding at the same time? Oh, would you please one more? Thank you. One more again. Thank you. So, considering the excellent mitigation strategies that we are skilled at implementing, and knowing the trend data here in District 25, I take this recommendation from me very, very seriously. I would recommend to the board that I believe we can safely open school fully with all pre-pandemic procedures and activities. We should educate our community about the Illinois Department of Public Health's recommendation of masks for unvaccinated individuals. But I believe that we can communicate that mask wearing for students is at the parents' discretion. We can communicate that mask wearing for adults is at the individual's discretion. We should communicate that flexibility continues to be important in case our health department's guidance changes. We can provide for 3-foot distance where possible to the greatest extent, and that we should continue to partner with our health department on contact tracing and quarantine procedures. And with that, thank you. A little update to our planned remote learning, should it be needed. District 25 must provide remote learning option to students who have not accessed a COVID-19 vaccine and also are under quarantine from the Department of Public Health. We will have separate remote temporary classes for students who meet this declaration. Other absences for other reasons will follow our typical absence procedures. And I would recommend that remote learning sunsets when quarantine is no longer required. An option for the board to be aware of is that this could extend into the future or for other required vaccines during this upcoming school year. We have policy 7:280, which talks about the religious exemption of required vaccines. And in that exhibit related to that policy, it does not give remote learning as an option for those who have to be excluded. For example, a few years ago, we were seeing the possibility of a large flu outbreak. And at that time, the health department notified us that any students that were had not had the required vaccines needed to be excluded for an amount of time. Remoting in is not an option according to that policy and the procedures and exhibits applied to it. So that is something we may need to revisit if we choose to do that moving forward. And related to remote learning, a little update, you've seen this before. We would create multi-grade with some flexibility classes with grade level standards and typical class sizes. likely a kindergarten to second, a third to fifth, and now a sixth to eighth, and then a special educator. We may need to hire up to 3 long-term substitute positions if what we believe will be our middle school exclusions is significantly increased from our expectations. At the last board meeting, I shared that we talked about maybe needing to hire 3 additional full-time teachers for this, but we really believe that is no longer necessary based on the data both in our school district in Arlington Heights and in Region 10 Cook County. While we don't know how many of our 12-year-olds and up are actually vaccinated, we do know how many families, when those vaccinations became available, reached out and took their kids out of school to go get them. So we have a general idea. So we really don't believe we'll have a large number of students at the middle school who would need to be quarantined. So we think we're really confident we can do it with the 4 positions we'd already talked about, but if we get surprised that we could hire long-term subs. For those at the elementary level, the general elementary schedule would be followed with the same start and end times for any of our students that would need to quarantine and join the remote classroom. Specials would be asynchronous and would typically happen from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Lunch would be asynchronous. Related services would be scheduled on an individual basis. Otherwise, anyone that would join a remote class during their quarantine would have a teacher live with them for all other subject areas. Same thing basically at the middle school. Those courses would follow a start and end time along with their peers. Our creative arts and PE would be asynchronous, and then we'd schedule any individual services individually. And as I mentioned, we've talked about before, this program utilizes the already 4 extended assignment substitute positions that have been a part of the budget for the last year. We would just start them as remote teachers. If they're not needed as remote teachers, they would fill that extended substitute need. And once quarantining was over, they would become those full-time extended assignment subs. That's really the major pieces of the update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. President.
Yes, Rich.
Just had a question on the quarantining, and I don't know if that has already been set. Is that, based on the current guidance, is quarantining optional, or is it mandated, or is it, what's the general thought or guidance or mandate or whatever term is being used?
Yeah, at this point, it is required as a part of public health law. The Illinois Department of Public Health does have the right to make some determinations, especially during a pandemic. So that is not something that we can pick or choose from. Again, another way we can help with quarantine is when a school district does that screening testing. For example, once a week, families who volunteer, their kids can be screened, and if they are in that screening testing, they would not have to quarantine if they're a close contact. So it's something we'll continue to look into. It would only apply to those who choose to volunteer to be a part of that screening testing.
Mr. President.
Yes, Gina.
Dr. Biden, you said that there's some areas where this 3-foot distance isn't possible. What is our risk exposure to quarantine based on the new guidance?
Our risk exposure to quarantine is significantly reduced by the change to 3 feet as opposed to 6 feet. In the vast majority of our classrooms, we can maintain 3 feet at the elementary level. At the middle school level, it can be more difficult. So when the last few months of the school year, we have some middle school classrooms where students are 1.5 feet away, some that are 3, some that are 6. It really depends on the size of the classroom and the number of students who choose that. At the same time, at the middle school, we have most of our students are 12 or more older and may have chosen a vaccine, so we're reduced in quarantine risk because of that.
And does that include now with putting all of the furniture that's in outside storage, we can still maintain these distances, not expect, hypothetically, not under the new guidance, not expect any quarantines in our elementary schools and limit the risk to potentially just our middle schools?
I would say I would not agree that we would have no quarantines at the elementary school. I love that idea, but I would say in the vast majority of our classrooms, we can have 3 feet between children, but not in all of our classrooms, and even at the elementary level, especially as we want to help our students and teachers return to some more typical instructional experiences. So I would never say none. I would say we are greatly reduced at risk.
And is there a communication plan that will notify parents of when and if their child could be exposed to or is exempt from based on new standards? So for example, Susie is in, pick a school. Right
Windsor.
now, we'll pick Windsor. Susie's at Windsor and she's in 3rd grade. Is there a notification for parents so that they can be educated based on the recommendation about wear a mask, don't wear a mask, on is she in an environment where she is or isn't within these 3 feet?
Yeah, we did something like that last year where we shared when there, especially at the middle school, we shared when there are this many, when there are 14 chairs in a class, we can guarantee the distance, and we shared every period what number of chairs there were in a class. We did that, I believe, also at the elementary. We can say in Mrs. Jones's class, there are 25 students and their desks are XYZ apart. That also becomes different when you get to art, music, PE, right? And then lunchroom will be the other piece that we have to still figure out, can we completely distance that safe amount, that 3 feet amount? But yeah, we can definitely communicate where those less than 3 feet places are.
Okay, and my last question is on the pre-pandemic procedures and activities. Does that include, or let me rephrase it as a question, what does that include as it relates to lunch?
Yeah, so lunch will have their hot service options back. The only thing that they're thinking of doing different is a student used to, like at the elementary, would go and pick up their apple and pick up this. They're going to pre-package those side items, but they'll be back to options for students. At this point, we expect to eat in the lunchroom, but we're going to take a look at some different arrangements for options for parents to choose if they'd like, but we believe we can return to utilizing the lunchroom and maybe another large space at each school, as opposed to some students staying in their classroom to eat. Other pre-pandemic activities, all clubs and activities will return. We'll be changing in the locker rooms for gym class. Field trips will be allowed with the understanding that we have to wear masks on the bus, and if we're going somewhere on a field trip that asks for unvaccinated people to be masked, that we will go with whatever that place is asking us to do as guests to their organization. All sports activities, clubs, volunteers, at this point, it would basically be your more typical school year.
Mr. President.
Chad.
Dr. Bond, I do have a question regarding the quarantine and mainly the contact tracing process, right? So I understand people can be vaccinated, the kids will be vaccinated, but in the case of where you have a close contact, they're not wearing a mask, what is the cost going to be for us to have to reach out to parents and say, were they vaccinated? Do we have staff to handle that? I guess that's what my bigger concern is, right? It sounds like, I'm happy for the recommendation, but it sounds like where these contact tracers now have a new element of their job, and what is the impact of the cost? And just want to make sure I understand that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are not continuing the contact tracer positions at this point. This summer, we did it with our school nurses. But again, we had 0 cases, so we will plan, our plan would be to start the school year back with our school nurses and our administrators. If we see a dramatic increase that would be surprising to us, we may need to relook at how we staff that, but we believe we can do it between our administrators and our school nurses at this time.
And one more question, sorry, Mr. President. I'll be brief, then we can let Rich ask a question. Giving you a hard time. So if a parent does not want to share their vaccination status, then they will have to quarantine. Just, I want to make sure, like, very clear. It's not that we're trying to ask them, but in order to prevent quarantining, a parent who has a child that's vaccinated will have to share that status. I mean, I know that it sounds really simple, but it's just an important piece that we make clear to everybody that this is not trying to ask them to prevent it. We just want, hey, we're not trying to create this difference, but if you want not to quarantine, we have to have that status.
That is true. So if we call a family and say your child is a close contact and will need to quarantine, and let's say it's a 12-plus-year-old and they say, well, our student is vaccinated, say, great, can you show us that? And then great, they don't have to quarantine. If it's someone who is not vaccinated, they will need to quarantine and join their remote class during that time.
And then one more question on the testing guidance, where you say we volunteer if testing is still available. I know we were doing, if it was, could the parent volunteer to have the child tested and not quarantine, or?
So that's only for someone who is symptomatic to test if they are positive or not. You can't get out of quarantine if you're a close contact. Good question.
Mr. President.
Yes, Greg.
So, Dr. Vine, we have a recommendation from the CDC recommending masks for unvaccinated individuals, and you're looking at our local conditions, our school district, and saying, we can do mask optional. So could you talk about how would we evaluate if and when masks might be required?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? And the CDC, IDPH, they are our medical experts. I am not a medical expert, but I do appreciate their guidance also saying, look at your local environment and look at, as you take mitigation strategies away, do you still have other mitigation strategies in place that are strong? And we do. We do have very strong mitigation strategies in place. In terms of what happens if we maybe need to go back to masks, there's, in my mind, not a specific number, but I do think if we see a trend that is impacting our students and our staff in our schools in District 25, I would be reaching out saying, all right, we're seeing this really jump, and I would be sharing that I would talk with the board about it would be my recommendation that we move back to masks at a certain time. We all hope, and I hope, that we don't need to do that, but again, that's part of the we have to be flexible. As that guidance changes, if we see our students becoming sick and becoming ill and becoming at risk within our schools, I do believe we need to come back together and talk about that.
And when you were pointing to the numbers from summer school, to be clear, those students were wearing masks and still at 6-foot spacing. So it's really like the old rules when we were talking about whether or not there were exclusions.
Thank you. They were wearing masks. They were not necessarily at 6-foot distance. They were at distancing to the greatest extent possible. And depending on the program or the classroom, distancing may have been minimal. But some it would have been as much as it could be. But yes, the students and our staff, so even those people who were vaccinated, were wearing masks in summer school.
Yes, Rich.
I think, Lori, you make a great point, is that the district has done a wonderful job of mitigation. I mean, all of us, I think, were at schools throughout the year, and we saw what the staff was doing, the students were doing, everything that was done. And I do appreciate the view that we've kind of had many conversations on what is happening in our local environment. If we look at the trends, they're down, things of that nature. Everything is, knock on wood, is in a positive manner. So I do appreciate the view of this as being a positive view, meaning a positive, let's take a positive step, knowing that there might be something that we need to look at. So I do appreciate your recommendation in that particular vein. I guess with that, I'll move that the board approve the superintendent's recommendation to open the school fully with all pre-pandemic procedures and activities, educate the community about IDPH's recommendation of masks for unvaccinated individuals, but communicate that mask wearing for students is at the parent's discretion, communicate that mask wearing for adults is at the individual's discretion, communicate that flexibility continues to be important in case of health department guidance changes, provide for a 3-foot distance to the greatest extent possible, partner with the health department on contact tracing and quarantine procedures.
Second.
All right, so we do have a motion from Rich and a second from Gina. With that, let's open it up to discussion if there's anything further from the questions, because we do have a motion now based on this. Does anybody have any comments or concerns?
And if I could just add to Rich's comment about looking at our local environment, I would say that the data also is mirrored at the county level, at the state level as well.
I would just say, right, I hate to say it, it's July, and things can happen. So I'm okay, I want to move forward with the vote, but I just want to make sure everybody aware is that we don't control what could happen in the future. So I know that's an obvious statement, sounds really stupid to say, but I'm saying it because I think people are going to say, oh, you voted on it, whatever happens, but I don't want people to think that this is the end-all, be-all, that there could be changes, to your point, Dr. Bine. And we ask the community to be patient with the fact that when changes occur, we have to look at it at that point in time and make those best decisions.
Yeah, I think what's come out lately is that we are our own local government, and I appreciate that we are making the decision that's for our own district. So with that, does anybody have any further comments or concerns? All right, with that, we'll take it to the vote. Lana?
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Olenichek?
Yes.
Member Philippek?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Thank you. So looking forward to moving in the right direction there. That's some good stuff. Going back to student learning, this is Dr. Becky Fitzpatrick, and this is the curriculum equity audit. This is an action item, so we're going to need a motion. Does I have a motion for 8 student learning?
Mr. President,
Yes, Gina.
I move that the Board of Education approve the curriculum equity audit as submitted.
Thank you, Gina. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Rich. Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. As the board recalls, in August of 2020, the board adopted a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy that directs the district to design and implement a curriculum to embrace and support diversity and cultural competence within our learning community. In accordance with the policy, we recommend an agreement with Public Consulting Group, or PCG, to conduct a curriculum equity audit of our K-8 literacy curriculum, K-8 social studies curriculum, and the Library Media Center collections to ensure they reflect the diversity of students and families in our community. The audit will consist of 3 phases. In the first phase, data collection and analysis, PCG will conduct focus groups with key stakeholders that may include District 25 administrators, teachers, students, and parents to understand their experience interacting with the curriculum. They will also review documents such as curriculum guides, policies, pacing guides, rubrics, and intervention programs. In Phase 2, curriculum analysis, PCG will use a customized curriculum audit tool to examine the representation of the diversity of students in curricular materials and collections and the processes to select curricular materials. And in the final phase of the audit, which will be completed by January of 2022, PCG will provide an implementation roadmap to ensure the continuation of this work across other curricular areas. They will also provide a report that will include recommendations for increasing representation and further embracing and supporting diversity and cultural competence in District 25's curriculum. With that, we recommend an agreement with Public Consulting Group to conduct this curriculum equity audit at the cost of $68,400.
Thank you, Dr. Fitzpatrick. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Mr. President.
Yes, Greg.
Dr. Fitzpatrick, thank you for bringing this forward. I would like to highlight a few things out of that proposal from PCG, but first, could you briefly talk about what an RFP process is and maybe even some conjecture on why we only received one proposal back? I know it's your best guess. We don't know for sure maybe, but.
Sure. So the RFP stands for a request for proposal. So in an effort to reach out to numerous organizations, firms, and individuals, we created what's called a request for proposal, where we outline the scope of the work that we hope a company could help us with. We send it out. We reach out to other area districts, connections. We network to find other organizations that do this kind of work. We send them then a pretty comprehensive scope of work and ask them in turn to submit a proposal if they should so desire. So as you mentioned, we did receive only one. We sent it out. There were 14 firms we considered. There were, of those, about 10 actually specifically focus on curriculum. As the board knows, equity audits can comprise a number of different areas. There are only specific organizations and firms that specialize, kind of partner that work with curriculum. So it would be conjecture to speculate as to why we only received one, but probably the best piece of information to share there would be that this is a narrow focus of equity work. As the board knows, we are engaged in other areas of equity work with other individuals. So that would be my best guess.
Thank you. And, in the proposal, I really appreciated that, the student perspective will be included. And wanted to ask, has there been consideration to including parents in the process?
Yeah, actually, I mentioned that in the presentation.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. But as you probably noticed, actually, in the written proposal, the language is such that it indicates things like may include students. It talks about stakeholders. So in our opinion, we believe that stakeholders include parents. Their interaction with the curriculum probably looks significantly different than our students, let's say, but nonetheless, an important stakeholder group to connect with on this effort.
Yeah, and thank you. And I just want to highlight there were pulled two quotes from their proposal that I thought were noteworthy. Out of the phase 2, that the audit will also examine the work of the District 25 team around data and its use to drive curricular decisions, as well as the selection of materials and the degree to which they reflect the diversity of students and families in the district. So I found that heartening that it's data is going to be central to that process. And then the other one from the phase 3, looking at how this will impact the district going forward past this process. They'll have the implementation roadmap in it, and they say this roadmap will provide a sequence of actions for the district's curriculum and instruction team to use PCG's tools and processes to continue the work of curriculum auditing in other content areas. So I found that also heartening that this isn't a one and done, that we will have tools to use going forward and learn from.
Well, and honestly, thank you for highlighting that. That is a unique aspect of the proposal that we discussed pretty thoroughly with PCG. It's somewhat unique. They've engaged in this work previously, but in terms of customizing an implementation roadmap for a district to then utilize for subsequent curriculum work, that's going to be a little bit new. So we're very excited about that and feel it's also a way to be fiscally responsible. As the board would well know, curriculum is pretty expansive if we pull in everything. So we're looking forward to having that framework in which to examine all other areas of our students' experiences.
Is there an opportunity then going forward without a large proposal like this to then go back to PCG? You know, if you needed assistance with the tool or something like that on a, you know, ad hoc basis, is there an opportunity for that?
Yeah, I think in terms of completing the work that's outlined in the proposal, you mean?
No, like implementing
beyond
curriculum changes.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, I think, again, because that implementation roadmap being customized and then shared with us, they did indicate, again, because that becomes a tool that they turn over to us, we do have some flexibility to continue to kind of engage with them on, you know, how that best works for us.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Thanks.
All right, any further questions?
Mr. President.
Yes, Rich.
Just a question, though, and I don't know if we have a direct answer for it, but you know, when they're doing this audit, what's the standard that they're going to assess it by? I know they're talking to their stakeholders and things of that nature, but is that the standard they're going to use to say, yep, our curriculum is equitable or diverse or something of that nature? So how do we know that it's not just their opinion from the East Coast or the West Coast, or, you know, but
Sure.
I think they're an East Coast firm if I saw.
Yeah, I think they have offices in a number of different areas, but I think they are primarily based in the East. In the proposal, I don't know if I'll be hard pressed to find it specifically, but it does talk about utilizing best practices for this work. So the initial phase, which will include engaging in conversations with various members of the team that have been assigned to this project, that's when we'll be kind of digging into those best research and practices so that the work is grounded in that.
Becky, the other thing I would add is they're going to basically reflect back to us what they learned. And then we can make some inferences from that, some decisions about that.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, truly, they will make recommendations that then, as a district, we can consider.
Any more questions?
I'll just point out for the board that Becky and Stacy Malik together looked over the first proposal, went back to the company, and actually bargained a lower price than they had started with.
Good job. Hardball. All right, hearing no more questions, we can take it to a vote.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Olenichak?
Yes.
Member Philippak?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Conley?
All right, vote passes 6-0. What's that? Yeah, I guess. Sometimes it lines up. All right, moving on to student services. This is our special education report.
Thank you, and as we pass the PowerPoint thing down to Dr. Leswicki, we thought that it would be timely for Dr. Leswicki to kind of review how the Department of Student Services services our students in District 25. As we've had some combinations on the side about special education, we know that'll be a topic that we begin addressing through strategic planning. So I thought it would be smart to kind of bring us all back to a common understanding of what the Department of Student Services does and who our students are. So thank you, Dr. Leswicki, for sharing that information tonight.
Thank you for having me. I want to give an overview of the special education services we offer in District 25, show a breakdown of student services staff and the number of students in District 25 that are receiving special education, as well as review our questions for the future. The Department of Student Services is a very busy place. To begin, we are responsible for the health services of the district, which includes the school's registered nurses, certified school nurses, and the processes and procedures that are implemented in the health offices. We are responsible for the management of all student records. Not sure if you're aware of this, but the district holds on to student permanent records for 60 years and student temporary records for 5 years after leaving District 25. We do a lot of scanning and maintaining records because all of records requests come through our office. We work with building administrators on pervasive truancy issues of students. McKinney-Vento liaison entails working with students and families who are experiencing homelessness and or students who are considered unaccompanied youth. The Department of Student Services is responsible for implementing and managing Section 504 plans for students who qualify for accommodations. Through our proportionate share, District 25 provides speech and language services for students who qualify through individual service plans at our area private and parochial schools. Additionally, we conduct evaluations for students in these settings as needed. The private schools we work with are St. James, St. Peter's, Our Lady of the Wayside, Christian Liberty Academy, and Fudabakai. We educate and provide related services for students who are homebound due to medical needs or if they cannot attend school for some reason. As you know, we have an exemplary early childhood program for students ages 3 to 5 with individualized education plans as well as for students without. Additionally, through the Child Find process, we have screenings and evaluate early childhood students and work closely with the community early intervention providers to best meet the needs of our youngest learners. IDEA implementation refers to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the legal mandate whereas school districts provide special education services for students with disabilities. The Department of Student Services oversees all of the special education and related services for our district. I plan to go further into detail regarding the special education services that we offer. And lastly, the Department of Student Services, alongside with the Department of Student Learning, implement MTSS, or the multi-tiered systems of support. Together, we establish processes and procedures for tiered intervention and curriculum implementation. District 25 offers a full continuum of services for our students receiving special education. The purpose of individualized education plans is to ensure the right to a free, appropriate public education for every student in special education. The ultimate goal of special education is to serve students in the least restrictive environment that is most appropriate for their individual needs. Many factors are considered by our educational teams when determining the least restrictive environment for students. These factors are individualization, the benefits to that student, effects on peers, appropriateness, integration, and the use of supplementary aids and services. Services in District 25 include general education with supplementary aids and services, where special education staff work with the general education staff to adapt curriculum, develop interventions, make modifications, and implement accommodations for students in the general education setting. Itinerant services are when students receive support in a specific area of need, such as speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, or social work services, either as an individual, in a small group, or in class. Resource placements are for students who receive special education support less than 50% of their day, including their related services. Services may be provided within the general education setting or outside of the general education setting in a resource room. These are all available in our District 25 schools. As we move through the continuum of services, our instructional programs support students who receive special education support for more than 50% of their day. The students participate in alternate curriculum for elements of core instruction in reading, writing, and math. The students participate in general education classes, such as as specials, recess, as determined by the IEP team. Our district instructional programs include our early childhood program, where we have self-contained classrooms, a classroom we call communications, and our children's circle, which includes typical peers. At our elementary schools, we have our foundations and communications program. Those are housed at Windsor, and our integrated services program, which is housed at Westgate. The extended resource program and the individualized learning program are at each of the middle schools. Additionally, we partner with NSSEO in providing support and placements for some of our students. District 25 utilizes NSSEO's public therapeutic day schools for students whose needs cannot be met in a district school due to their intense level of academic, behavioral, functional needs. NSSEO programming is at Timber Ridge for students with emotional and behavioral needs, at Minor for students with autism and cognitive needs, and in District 62 MacArthur for students with hearing impairments. Additionally, we work with private therapeutic day schools for students whose needs cannot be met in a public therapeutic day school. We have students next year that will be placed at Winston Knowles and Hyde Park Day School. The most restrictive placements on the continuum of services offered are residential placements and home hospital services. Students needing residential placements require an intense level of support where needs cannot be met in a day school environment. These placements require ISBE approval and may be out of state. Currently, we have 2 students where we are investigating possible residential placements. Lastly, District 25 offers home and hospital services for students who cannot attend school due to mental or physical needs. These students must have a current doctor's note requesting home hospital services. Currently, we have 3 homebound students and 1 partial homebound student. Educational environments. ISBE sets goals and collects data on the 4 educational environments where students with disabilities can be educated. As I reviewed with the board earlier this year or last year, District 25's overall performance was met at 88%, which we are very, very proud of. However, we fell short on indicator 5A, which measures the percent of students inside the regular education classroom for 80% or more of the day. Over the course of the last year, I had the opportunity to participate in NSSEO's Positive Pathways Focus Group led by Dr. Judy Hackett. Several ISBE members participated in this group as well. Many topics surrounding the state targets and special education were discussed throughout these meetings with the ISBE members. One particular meeting focused on the LRE determination, specifically indicator 5A. ISBE is redefining their state targets as they have determined several districts across the state, including us, have not met indicator 5A, and they saw this trend over the last 8 years. However, even with the redefining of state targets, we will continue to work towards improvement in this area. Our student services staff. The Department of Student Services is fortunate to have exceptional professionals working on our school teams. Here at Dunton, working in the DSS office, we have 2 amazing administrative assistants. They are Diane Carpenter and Ginny Braun. Anytime you're here, stop by and say hello. They love welcoming new faces into our office, as so do I. The student service coordinators are administrators assigned to schools, and they help to oversee and lead the special services team. Dina Albrecht works with Dryden, Olive, Ivy Hill, and Patton teams. Lauren Hammer, who is new to the department and will work with the Thomas team. Diane Kafka serves as halftime assistant principal and halftime early childhood coordinator at Greenbrier. Lisa Cramp will work with South and Westgate teams and manages our students that are placed out of district. Andrea Lusso, position is shared with DSL, and she serves as the RTI MTSS coordinator. Melanie Soprano serves as halftime assistant principal and halftime coordinator at Windsor. She was also our principal for extended school year this past summer. And Allie Yoder, who is also new to our team, who will serve as halftime assistant principal and coordinator at Westgate. Our student services certified staff. This chart represents the full-time equivalent of certified teachers at each building. It is broken down by teachers who are working with students who receive resource special education services and teachers who are working with students in our instructional programs. Teacher allocations are determined by overall enrollment of students needing special education services at each school. This number fluctuates from year to year. Therefore, the number of special education teachers may fluctuate as well. District 25 has several support staff and related services staff that are on our teams. The full-time equivalent for these positions are also determined by the number of students in need of these services at each building. We are extremely fortunate to have related services staff and support in all of our schools. Students receiving special education. The data in this chart is from June, as we are still in the process of rolling over information into our IEP database. What you see in the second column of this chart is the total number of students by building who have individualized education plans. The speech-only column refers to the students at each building who only receive speech and language related service. The column titled Other Eligibility shows the number of students who have special education placements. If we look at Dryden, for example, 49 students have IEPs. 14 of those students only receive speech services, while 35 of the 49 special education placements across the continuum are at Dryden. I want to make specific mention to the final column that states non-homeschool. These numbers reflect students who are receiving special education services outside of their home school. Referring back to Dryden, 10 of the 49 total students with IEPs are receiving special education services at schools other than Dryden. These students may be placed at one of our district instructional programs at Westgate, Windsor, or even in an NSSEO program. Although the serving school may differ from the student's home school, District 25 does implement inclusive practices. Students that are in instructional programs participate in general education specials, lunch, and recess. Additionally, students in our instructional programs may also be placed in core academic classes as determined by their IEP. District 25 supports all students in their least restrictive environment, both in special education and in general education. Percent of students with IEPs. The information presented here is from the 2020 State School Report Card. In District 25, 11.4% of our overall student population have IEPs. District 25 is well below the state where 17.8% of students have IEPs. A typical checkpoint or target for school districts is that 10% of students have IEPs. State assessment information. Students with IEPs are required to participate in state assessment. The state does offer an alternate assessment called the Dynamic Learning Maps, or the DLM. However, less than 1% of students with IEPs are eligible to take the alternate state assessment. Therefore, 99% of students with IEPs take the IAR with their peers every spring. We are able to provide accommodations to support students with this test, but it's important to remember these students have IEPs because of their learning challenges. There are two ways to look at the results from the IAR in terms of our students with IEPs. First is proficiency, and the second is how they perform compared to their peers. On the left, is IAR Proficiency for students with IEPs. The most recent state data from 2019 shows that in District 25, 16.5% of students with IEPs were proficient on math IAR, compared to 8.5% of students with IEPs across the state were proficient. Similarly, with ELA, 16.9% of students with IEPs were proficient on ELA IAR, compared to 9.2% of students with IEPs across the state were proficient on ELA IAR. And finally, students with IEPs were proficient on science IAR, compared to 16.8% of students with IEPs across the state were proficient. Our students with IEPs in District 25 significantly outperform students with IEPs across the state, just as with our general education students outperform general education students across the state. We can definitely contribute this to being part of the Arlington Heights community, where we have exceptional teachers, involved families, and a community that supports all students. Another way we look at the performance of students with IEPs is how these students compare with their typical peers. What you will see on the right side of the slide is that the gap is smaller at the state than it is in District 25. While we always want to lessen the gap the best we can, this is not surprising considering the overall high level of achievement of District 25's general education students. Of course, this is information we will continue to review and continue to ask questions that we want to investigate moving forward. Additionally, each school team also evaluates student progress toward their IEP goals. These goals are highly individualized to meet the specific needs of each student. While state assessments are an important measure for the district as a whole, school teams focus on IEP goals and progress towards meeting those needs. MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. MTSS is a framework designed to respond to the needs of all students within a system which integrates tiered academic and behavioral supports. Tiered support for students occurs in a couple of different ways. Tier 2 interventions can occur within the classroom by the teacher working with small groups or by an interventionist working with small groups within the classroom. They can also occur with an interventionist working with small groups out of the classroom. Tier 3 interventions are typically facilitated outside of the classroom in small groups or as in individuals. We would hope that Tier 1 can meet 80% or more of the students' needs. Tier 2, we shoot for 10% of the students receiving interventions, and same with Tier 3. District 25 is fortunate to have an MTSS/RTI coordinator and interventionist in place to support all students. Looking forward, and with our continuous improvement efforts in the Department of Student Services, we are asking some questions. How can we best improve the academic growth for our students? How can we best support our students' social and emotional needs? How can we expand our inclusive practices in District 25? What resources or reallocation of services will need to take place? And what is the estimated cost to sustain any change? We'll work together as a department to investigate our options. The Department of Student Services is also exploring bringing Special Olympics to District 25. Both District 25 middle school principals have worked with Special Olympics throughout their career, and the Windsor principal has extensive experience with the traditional Special Olympics option. We have met with all three principals to discuss how we can bring Special Olympics to District 25. Additionally, in a meeting with the Special Olympics, with the Special Olympics main program contact, we were directed to start at the middle school, whereas Special Olympics will only create an elementary program if a middle school program exists in order to sustain the program as students move forward. Currently, we have Partners in Athletics at Thomas Middle School and the Ambassador program at South Middle School. Both are similar to the traditional teams model in Special Olympics. Schools in District 25, however, it is our long-term goal that we can provide unified champion schools. We will get back to the board in the future with the potential costs of a Special Olympics coordinator and coaching stipends. In closing, District 25 offers amazing programs for students receiving special education services. Student success can be attributed to the dedication and hard work of all of our special education teachers, related service providers, teaching assistants, and administrators. None of what we do or offer our most neediest students could be done without the high-performing staff we have in District 25. I am proud of their work and honored to be part of the Department of Student Services team. Thank you very much. And any questions that I can answer?
If I could just add on to, thank you, Dr. Zolewski, to her report a little bit about Special Olympics. We have looked into Special Olympics partnerships in the past with a group of parents a couple of times, and throughout those processes, at that time, the parents felt they were already accessing that through NWSRA, and that our programs, especially at the middle school, Thomas especially, is really more of a unified approach where it's general education peers and students with special needs meeting to do different athletics throughout the year. The one at Thomas is modeled after the Hersey program. So at those times, we decided not to move forward. Katie Rausch, a member of our community, connected us with someone from Special Olympics this year that Dr. Zolewski has also worked with in many capacities before. And when we met together, as Dr. Zolewski said, she recommends or says that through Special Olympics, you must have a middle school program in order to have an elementary program on the unified level. On the unified program is where you have general education peers and special education peers doing, it can be a variety of activities together. But you must start at the middle school so that if you have an elementary, those students have another program to go into. She recommended that we actually start with a more traditional special education Olympics program, and that would be kind of a district-wide program. Students of all ages could come together to be on a Special Olympics team with a variety of sporting opportunities. And that when that was in place, then to move towards a unified, should we want to do that. So there's lots of options, and we've, as Peg said, she met with principals. Again, Lindsay Anastasio from Windsor has extensive experience working with Special Olympics in many capacities. So it was great to tap into her expertise as well. And so we could really design a program that fits our district students' interests, but we did see that there is a lot of organizing, paperwork, kind of, I would say, compliance, alignment pieces that would need to be in place. So we do believe there need to be someone given a coordinator stipend. And just like we pay our other team coaches a stipend, we believe that that would apply here as well. So that's something we'll come back to the board with a proposal for as we look at if that's something we want to bring into District 25. Our middle school principals also both have experience working with Special Olympics in previous districts, so they were excited about the opportunity and very willing to step up and organize things should we move in that direction.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments?
Mr. President.
Ms. Rich.
Can you go back to slide number 13? It's the state assessment information. I appreciate the discussion. I'm just trying to understand, why that gap is so high, both in the math and the ELA. Now, I understand it's measured against our, common student, and you know, our students, typical peers, you know, in the 80, and I get that just they score high, but this is an ongoing trend. So what is keeping us from being able to shorten that gap or raise up the scores of those students with IEPs?
And I'll jump in. I think kind of how Peg referenced, that's one of the questions that she's leading in her department. Why do we see this gap over several years? And there's so many variables right now. Just the test itself changing every year is a variable, but they're working on looking at that. Hopefully as we take the Illinois Assessment of Readiness now, that we took this fall will be a little different, or this spring will be a little different from next spring, but they're starting to look further into what variables can they rule out to see if we can figure that out.
Mr. President?
Yes, Greg.
Thank you, Dr. Zolewski, for the presentation. And I wonder if you could talk about, and I imagine this could be a lot of information, so maybe briefly, you know, for parents entering, you know, our district or entering, you know, needing services from your department, or if they're entering the MTSS, what kind of supports, what kind of information, what kind of customer service, like because that could be, you know, a lot of information, a lot of procedures to go through for parents. So how do we support parents wherever they are in your department as they, you know, are taking care of their child?
I would suggest that parents reach out either to their school teams, because what you've just stated actually can be a lot of different variables, right? You know, if we're talking about little ones, that would be working with the Greenbrier team and working with Diane Kafka, who will walk them through exactly what needs to be done in terms of early childhood, and working with our school teams. The first approach, I would say, would be to contact one of the coordinators that are assigned to one of those programs. In terms of MTSS and RTI and interventions, that is really done at the building level, where letters are sent home to parents letting them know that students would qualify for interventions, and they are communicating with parents when they progress monitor students to let them know if students are moving forward in interventions or if an intervention needs to change. That's a very kind of complex question, Greg, because
understood. That's a very broad question.
There are several different ways that, and several different scenarios that could come up with students. Yeah.
You know, I'll add to that. I think that's a great question,
Yeah.
Greg. I'll add to that. We've had many events with families, with kids at the older grades, and Mrs. Kafka from early childhood always comes to those, and the parents and the families know her. And it's, for me, it's a joy to watch her face as she's so excited to see kids that she's known since they were 3 years old as 8th graders or beyond. Gina knows we had a couple students that Gina talked about with the board were recognized at NSSEO recently, and there was Diane Kafka and some early childhood teachers there for those kids that were in the upper elementary grades or graduating 8th grade. So they really do become a contact for parents and a part of their family. Another thing that we do is we have an 8th grade night, a night for families whose children are, middle school who are transitioning to middle school, because special services programs can look very different, just like middle school looks different from elementary. That is a very well attended and wonderful event. And I'm kind of thinking to myself as I heard you ask the question, maybe there's some other related things we can do for even some of the younger grades and families. We do take them through as individuals, but that middle school preparation night is really so appreciated. We could probably create something for younger families as well.
Dr. Bind, I don't know if you just mentioned, but Diane Kafka does that with the early childhood staff as well, has a transition to elementary school night. And a lot of times we have individual meetings with families and work with the building principals so that we can have our little people feel real comfortable moving on to the kindergarten level.
I think that's a great question because that's for families. It's a really unknown experience, right? Think about us as families when our own kids enter kindergarten, we don't know what to expect. And when your child has some special needs in any area, that's even more unique. So it's a really great question on behalf of families and a reminder for us to continue to put ourselves in their shoes.
Any more questions? All right. Yeah. Stay tuned. All right, thank you, Dr. Zolewski. Next up, we have Business and Finance. This is going to be the 2021-22 Consolidated District Plan. This is an action item. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President.
Yes, Greg.
I move that the Board of Education approve the Consolidated District Plan for fiscal year 2021-22 as presented.
Thank you, Greg. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. Stacy Malik.
As you may or may not recall, I believe last year was the first year that the state consolidated. Historically, we've completed separate grant applications for our EL bilingual grants under Title III, our Title I, Title II, and Title IV grant under ESEA, and then our IDEA grant for the flow-through money in the pre-K. And with those applications, there was a variety of questions that you had to complete and identify, and whether you're, how you're going to spend the money, what your intent is, and then are you measuring and meeting what you're intending to do. And the questions were repetitive, so the state, in one step of being very wise, created this consolidated district plan so that all of those questions now only have to be answered one time. You do have some of the questions you do have to answer for each of the various grants, but the more general questions you can just answer one time. And as part of this new process, it does require that this plan be approved by the Board of Education, and this plan then allows us to move forward with completing our applications for all of these various funds that I just mentioned, totaling about $1.76 million.
Do we have any questions?
Stacey, I mean, your staff probably has the art of doing grants, because we always hear you doing grants and grants, so that's great. I guess the question I have is, though we've targeted roughly 8 million, what's the likelihood? What's our success rate? What's our likelihood of getting that, especially as we look at our budget going into the next 2 months or so?
So this group of grants, the title funds, these are annual dollars. The IDEA funds, these are federal dollars. These are not state dollars, so these are pretty much, we have an allocation, we write for them. We use, for example, our Title I funds. When we started receiving those, we use those for interventionists at South Middle School and Windsor, because those are the two schools that qualify in priority order first. That's pretty much a given because those staff are here and we're going to spend those dollars. We pay for their salary and benefits. Under IDEA preschool, we pay for some of the teacher assistants in our preschool courses. That's a given. We're going to spend those dollars. That staff is here. Under IDEA flow-through, we have a large number of teacher assistants that work with our special education kids. We use those funds to cover that. So for the most part, we do claims every quarter based on what we spent for that quarter, and we get that reimbursement within the following month for all of these dollars. The funds that are most discretionary, I would say, are Title II, because those funds are for staff development purposes. This year, clearly, there was not a whole lot of staff development. We were able to actually shift, and for some of our ruler training, where we may have hired subs in the past and brought our teachers together. We actually paid our teachers at that sub rate to do the training from home, outside of work, through videos and everything, and it worked quite well. But we will have carryover. There's waivers this year because a lot of funds couldn't get spent due to COVID, especially Title II. But those funds then, when we get to the point of writing the grant applications, that I work with both the Department of Student Services for the IDEA funds and the Department of Student Learning for all of the professional development that's planned for the year.
For the board, this amount for these is basically what we qualify for. So the federal government says, here's the amount you qualify for based on free and reduced lunch numbers, based on students who qualify for EL, and then what we're getting approval for is how we plan to use the funds.
Any more questions? All right, Lana, can we take it to a vote?
Member Olenichek?
Yes.
Member Philippek?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Conley? Yes. Member Scapalato?
Yes.
All right, vote passes 6-0. Thank you, Stacy. Move on to Facilities Management, which has no report tonight. Next up, we have Personnel and Planning. And this is the additional middle school cross-country coach stipends. This is an action item. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Yes, Brian.
I recommend the Board of Education approve 2 additional cross-country coach positions, 1 for each of the 2 middle schools, by adding 2 additional stipends at the value identified in the professional agreement with the Arlington Teachers Association.
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Chad.
I'm
Any
going to take
background?
the personnel items tonight on behalf of Dr. Kay, who did put this together for the board. We do have currently 2 cross-country coaches at South Middle School, 2 cross-country coaches at Thomas Middle School, but they're working with upwards of 180 students each, as cross-country is a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade combined sport, very popular one. I was not a runner in middle school. You could not have convinced me to be, but I am now, and super impressed by our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who can all outrun me. And so we do see the need for supervision and safety, and great experience for those kids to add 2 additional stipends so that we can go to 3 cross-country coaches at South and 3 cross-country coaches at Thomas.
All right. Let's run right into questions here. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, with that, let's take it to a vote. Lana?
Got to get the hang of that. Member Philippek?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Olenichek?
Yes.
All right, the vote passes 6-0. We move on to the superintendent contract amendment. This is an action item. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Yes, Rich.
move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent contract amendment as presented.
Thank you, Rich. Do we have a second?
Second.
Brian? Richard, Brian.
So Dr. Kay noticed that there was a typographical error in the contract in the insurance payment that is made to me on behalf of the board. The contract had read $7,684 a year. It really should have been $7,864, so a difference of, what's that, a difference of $180 per year. So we're asking that that be corrected.
All right, and I'd like to, on behalf of the board, I think that was in spirit of Van Halen, the brown M&Ms in their rider. I think we threw that in there just so if people are paying attention. But yeah, it just looks like it was a simple oversight. So any questions, comments, or concerns on that? All right. Lana, take it to a vote.
Member Philippek?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso.
Yes.
Member Conley.
Yes.
Member Scapalato.
Yes.
Member Oliniechek.
Yes.
All right, vote passes 6-0. Get that finalized. Next up, we have community input, our second community input of the night. Did we receive any further input requests? Looks like we might have 2. Sending them down. Take one, pass it down. All right, first off, we have Christy Witherow.
Hi, Christy Witherow, 731 South Roosevelt, if we still need to do that. First time ever here. I think we all know my husband ran for the board. While I'm really pleased with the presentation from the superintendent that masks will be optional for our children, I'm just a little disappointed in sort of the tone and the rhetoric in the conversation around it. I feel as though it's sort of a repeat from last year. You're sort of, the way it's presented is sort of pitting masked children against non-masked children, right? So you're setting this sort of tone when we're presenting and you ask questions directly to the superintendent regarding masks, where children that aren't wearing masks could cause a quarantining issue throughout the school, right? I understand that we need to notify and explain to the parents the repercussions of not wearing masks, but we need to teach our children and the parents to respect each other's choices. But the rhetoric in this room this evening surrounding this very difficult decisions for families is disappointing again. It's this way it's presented, it's the tone of voice in communications from our leadership that I just really was hoping for things to feel a little bit differently this year. It's why I'm here tonight, because I want my choice for my child to be her choice, but I don't want her to feel as though she's going to ruin someone else's day because she chooses not to wear a mask. And I think that's so important for you to push down to your staff, to push down to the children, or this is going to be a nightmare for everybody. So I'm grateful that you presented something tonight that gives parents a choice, but I think we really need to work on our tone and how we view each other. We need to be kinder to each other. Nobody knows anyone else's situation. Nobody knows my situation. I don't know yours. It's not my fucking business. Sorry. So I just need the rhetoric to change a little bit. It seems like we get a little too excited to talk about how we're going to go backwards. Well, this is what we can. This is what's going to happen if we go backwards. This is what it's going to be, right? What can we do to stay focused on this really great path we're on, right? I'm sorry, I'm so emotional, but I can't sit through another board meeting listening to this tone that is going to create a divide in this community. The tone needs to change. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Marianne Zolewski.
Hello, once again. Okay. Couple things. To build off of what Christy said, now that masks will be optional, right? What is that going to look like in an actual classroom, right? I'm a teacher. What's that going to look like? And we have to talk about this quarantine thing. Dr. Bine, you mentioned how we have to do quarantining as a method of mitigation. Is that a law? Is that law? That's what I want to know. I don't know if you're allowed to answer that, but I would like some form of written communication that explains to me whether
we have to have quarantine. Is that a law? Is that in the state of Illinois? Because there are already schools that have decided that they're not going to be using that as a form of mitigation. And that indicates to me that that's not a law. That is a local board decision. And that will greatly affect our children. And it comes back to what Christy just mentioned. Let's blame the kid in class that doesn't have a mask. As a teacher, how do I deal with that? Now I'm dealing with bullying in my classroom because kids are going after each other because masks or non-masks. So we have to create a culture of respect for other people's choices, for other people's beliefs. We have to. And yesterday, I was pleased to be a part of the DEI meeting that Dr. Bine had organized for our district and the community. I was so happy that you did that, and I'm so happy that there's 2 more scheduled. And I am trying to get more people to come to have conversations that need to be had clearly. I encourage the board members to go. I saw none of you there. I understand it was during the day. The next 2 are at night. I want you to hear Reverend Brooks speak. I want you to hear Destiny, excuse me, I forget her last name. She was phenomenal. She was eloquent. And you need to hear from your community right there. There's 2 meetings set up for you to be there and hear and be part of the conversation, and you should be. Your parents in this district, you should be there. I'm running out of time. But Dr. Bine, I do want to know about the law that requires quarantine. So I will be corresponding with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Future agenda items. So do we have topics, dates?
Yeah, a couple things I'll just remind the board are already unique topics and dates that are coming. The board is having its own committee of the whole meeting on diversity, equity, and inclusion with Dr. Peary and with Reverend Brooks. That workshop is scheduled before the August meeting, so from 5 to 7. Whenever there are more than 2 board members in a room, it does need to be a public meeting. So if you do plan to come more than 2 of you to the other community meetings, I need to know that because we do need to change the format of that. But we will have a workshop specifically focused for the board before the August meeting. We also have added a committee of the whole meeting before the early September. I don't know the exact date, but it's the first week in September for the board to have a more in-depth discussion about kindergarten. That also will be 5 to 7 that night. Again, a committee of the whole meeting is open to the public to come and observe, but they're really, committee of the whole meetings are basically focused on one topic and really a workshop type of environment to give the board an opportunity to really understand information before they move into different meetings where they take action on those topics. The kindergarten one especially will be coming to the board with a lot of information, some that we reviewed in 2017 that's updated and some that's new, and really be looking to the board to kind of dig into all of that information, have some brainstorming with us, a real open discussion on different paths we could take, and at the end we'll be looking for some direction from the board on which of those opportunities we have for kindergarten the board would be most interested in us continuing to pursue. So those are 2 unique topics that are coming up in the next couple of months.
Any new topics?
Mr. President?
Yes, Gina.
Dr. Biden, do we have the ETA on the update on Special Olympics, which is now going to be obviously a new item?
Yeah, we will likely bring you the Special Olympics topic. I want our building administrators to be back in the district for that to happen. So August or early September.
Mr. President?
Yes, Greg?
Just for the sake of those watching and listening, and if you said this, I apologize, the committee of the whole meetings, we are not making any decisions, correct, at those meetings?
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, committee of the whole is really more, there are not decisions made, there are not votes taken. They are for the purpose of both workshop learning experiences for the board, and also really kind of having some open conversation to help us as an administrative team get a sense of the board's vision on certain topics moving forward.
And I haven't been through one yet, so are there public comments at our committee of the whole?
We will have a public comment section for the meeting. And again, just kind of like a typical meeting, the community is welcome to come. We will live stream. They're welcome to observe those. They're different in tone in that instead of finalizing some of the business of the board that needs to happen, we need to have a real discussion aspect, be able to put everybody's thoughts and ideas and questions on the table so that we all end up kind of moving from a starting place together forward.
Is that the closing bell? Any other new items? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Do I have a motion to move into closed session?
Mr. President?
Yes, Rich?
I move that we close this, or I'm sorry, we close this meeting and move into closed session.
All right, do I have a second? Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Chad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. This meeting is adjourned, or the open meeting. We will move into closed.
And a reminder for the audience, the board does not make any decisions in closed session, and they do not have any votes scheduled after closed session. You're, of course, welcome to stay, but you wouldn't miss anything if you left.